A very good afternoon, investors. Happy New Year! You're now on KleverStock with me, Wan Izul Islam, and I'll be serving you the midday roundup with the latest market updates from this morning up until now. So we're going to kick it off with Bursa Malaysia updates. Investors continue to pare down positions on the domestic market on the first trading day of the new year as a quiet news flow and subdued buying interest prompted profit-taking ahead of the weekend. Now, in its technical outlook, TA Securities said the local market remains vulnerable to further consolidation as momentum indicators continue to weaken. In a quote, they said that immediate support remains at the September 2016 low of 1,645, with stronger support coming from the 76.4% Fibonacci retracement at 1,610. Followed by the 61.8% retracement at 1,564. Immediate resistance is seen at the October 2015 high of 1,727, with the next upside hurdle at 123.6% Fibonacci projection of 1,759. And that's followed by stronger resistance at the 138.2% projection of 1,804. Now, Rakuten trade, however, struck a more optimistic tone, noting that the local market, which ended 2025 above the 1,680 level, had been supported by local institutional buying. The research house said the potential return of foreign funds could provide further upside for domestic equities. Now, Rakuten trade, they expect the index to hover within the 1,675 to 1,690 range today. Now, at the opening bell, the FBM KLCI fell 4.91 points to 1,675.2 before extending losses to nearly 12 points, touching an intraday low of 1,668.12 within minutes. Selling pressure was most pronounced among heavyweight banking stocks, which had rallied toward the end of 2025. CIMB Group slid by 15 cents to 8 ringgit 10 cents. Maybank fell by 6 cents to 10 ringgit 42 cents. Public Bank also lost 6 cents to 4 ringgit 48 cents, while Mbank declined 6 cents to 6 ringgit 44 cents. Other notable decliners include SD Guthrie, which shed 9 cents to 5 ringgit 64 cents. Sime Darby eased 8 cents to 2 ringgit 7 cents, and IHH Healthcare slipped by 9 cents to 8 ringgit 66 cents. On the broader market, active counters included Mega First, which rose 1 cent to 90 cents. Binapuri, they were unchanged at 29.5 cents, and Kinergy Advancement edged down half a cent to 38 cents. Moving on to our local currency and foreign exchange, the ringgit edged higher against the US dollar on the first trading day of the year, supported by a softer greenback amid expectations of further United States Federal Reserve rate cuts in the year 2026. Now, at around 8 a.m. this morning, the local currency strengthened to 4.0540 or 4.0645 versus the US dollar, and that was from Wednesday's close of 4.0580 or 4.0620. Markets were, of course, closed on Thursday for the New Year holiday. Now, the US dollar weakened as expectations grew that the Fed could pursue a more accommodative policy stance in the year 2026 amid public pressure from US President Donald Trump for lower interest rates. Now, these developments have weighed on the greenback and raised concerns over the independence of the US Central Bank. IPPFA Sidian Berhad Director of Investment Strategy and country economist Mohammad Siddiq Jantan, he said that the ringgit moved in tandem with regional currencies and it's supported by a firmer Asia dollar index as broad-based Asian currency strength re-emerged. Now, Jantan said that in 2025, the US dollar index declined by approximately 9.6%, reflecting a sustained easing in US dollar exceptionalism. He also added that with Asia's macro outlook continuing to improve, most visibly through China's composite PMI rising to a 6-month high as both manufacturing and service return to expansion. The ringgit is well positioned to extend its strengthening trend into 2026 against the US dollar. Now, against major currencies, the ringgit was pretty mixed. It appreciated against the Japanese yen to 2.5864 or 2.5933. However, it did slip slightly versus the British pound to 5.4624 or 5.4765. And it also eased against the euro to 4.7635 or 4.7758. Now, the local currency, however, traded mostly higher against its ASEAN peers. It strengthened versus the Singapore dollar to 3.1541 or 3.1628. Our ringgit also rose against the Thai baht to 12.8291 or 12.8742. And it also improved against the Indonesian rupiah to 242.9 or 243.6. Now, the ringgit was nearly flat against the Philippine peso at 6.88 or 6.99. Now for some local economic news, Malaysia's manufacturing sector ended 2025 on a steady footing, with the seasonally adjusted S&P Global Malaysia Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index, or the PMI, for December unchanged at 50.1 from November. S&P Global said the latest reading pointed to a further marginal improvement in operating conditions across the manufacturing sector. Now, based on historical correlations between PMI data and official statistics, the December figure is consistent with continued solid year-on-year growth in both GDP and manufacturing production toward the end of 2025. Now, the improvement in sector health was largely supported by a strong rise in employment. Workforce numbers increased for a second consecutive month in December, with the latest uptick ranking as the third fastest since the survey began in July 2012 and the strongest in more than 7 years. Now, S&P Global Market Intelligence economist Mariam Baluch said that the overall Malaysia manufacturing PMI remained in positive territory as 2025 grew to a close. The key highlight from the latest survey was that employment rose at one of the strongest rates on record, while there were also encouraging signs of stabilization in output. Now, she also noted that manufacturers hired additional staff in preparation for new projects and to replace departing workers. Output, meanwhile, saw a slower pace of moderation in the final month of the year, edging closer to stabilization in December. However, Baluch said that there were signs of softer momentum in new order inflows during the month, following a modest expansion previously. Subdued demand conditions contributed to a milder price pressures, with inflation remaining contained partly due to a pause in the growth of raw material purchasing. S&P Global said muted demand trends were a key factor behind the easing in new business, while new export orders declined for the fourth consecutive month in December. Although the pace of contraction was slight, it was marginally stronger than in the previous survey period. Now, reflecting the slowdown in new factory orders, purchasing activity among manufacturers stagnated in December. Now, the seasonally adjusted index aligned with the neutral 50.0 threshold, marking the first month since June that manufacturers did not increase their input purchases. Now, still on local news updates, Malaysia recorded broad-based economic growth in the third quarter of 2025, underpinned by strong performance across all major sectors. That is according to Deputy Prime Minister Datuk Seri Fadillah Yusof. Now, he said the country's gross domestic product, or GDP, expanded by 5.2% in the third quarter of 2025, accelerating from 4.4% in the previous quarter, reflecting resilient domestic fundamentals despite ongoing global uncertainties. Datuk Seri Fadillah attributed the improved performance to close cooperation between the government, the civil service, the private sector, and the wider community, which has helped Malaysia navigate economic headwinds and external challenges throughout the year. Now, the Deputy Premier stated, Alhamdulillah, the Madani government led by Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim has now reached its third year. The journey has not been easy and there is still a long way to go, but the government remains committed to delivering the best services for the well-being of all Malaysians. Now, on the global front, Datuk Seri Fadilah noted that geopolitical tensions and prolonged conflicts in the Middle East continue to pose risks to energy security and global supply chains. He said these developments underscore the importance of political stability, national unity, and prudent economic management as key safeguards for Malaysia. Now, as the Energy Transition and Water Transformation Minister, Datuk Seri Fadilah also highlighted Malaysia's role as host of the 47th ASEAN Summit, which he said helped refocus the regional bloc on shared priorities such as economic stability, as well as food and energy security. Datuk Seri Fadilah said that ASEAN Chairmanship 2025 not only enhanced Malaysia's image on the global stage, but also strengthened the country's position as a trusted strategic partner and expanded economic and cooperation opportunities for the people's well-being and a sustainable regional future. Now, at the ministerial level, Datuk Seri Fadilah said Malaysia achieved a historic milestone with the hosting of the 43rd ASEAN Ministers on Energy meeting, which saw the launch of the ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation 2026-2035. Key outcomes include the signing of an enhanced Memorandum of Understanding on the ASEAN Power Grid, the ASEAN Petroleum Security Agreement, which is a successor agreement, as well as the launch of the ASEAN Power Grid Financing Initiative in collaboration with the Asian Development Bank and the World Bank. Now, we'll take a short break, but don't go away. We will return shortly with corporate news updates and developments right after this. And welcome back to the Midday Roundup. Let's continue with some corporate news developments in Malaysia. Now, the Sarawak state government has completed the acquisition of Maswing Sdn Bhd through Air Borneo Holding Sdn Bhd, with the takeover taking effect yesterday at January 1st on New Year's Day. Now, Air Borneo, a wholly owned entity of the Sarawak state government, said the sale and purchase agreement for the acquisition was signed between Malaysia Aviation Group and the Sarawak state government on February 12, 2025. But effective January 1st, 2026, Air Borneo will now assume full legal and operational responsibility of Maswings. During this initial phase of transition, Maswings branding will continue, whilst Air Borneo progressively rolls out its new brand identity. Now, it added that the Air Borneo appreciates the cooperation and understanding of passengers, partners, and stakeholders during the transition period. Now, according to Air Borneo, the acquisition supports the Sarawak state government's strategic objectives of strengthening regional air connectivity and ensuring affordable airfares for the people of Sarawak. Now, in a quote, they said, "It is a key step in supporting the state's broader social and economic development agenda and says the foundation and lays the foundation for the airline's next phase of growth as Air Borneo." Now, the Sarawak state government also expressed its appreciation to all employees, partners, and stakeholders for their support throughout the transaction and transition progress. Up next, we have some business updates. CPI Land Sdn Bhd. They're heading into 2026 with a stronger development pipeline underpinned by ongoing and upcoming projects expected to deliver a combined 2.4 billion ringgit in gross development value, or GDV. Now, the property developer currently holds about 126 acres of land bank and has completed developments with a total GDV of 1.18 billion ringgit to date. Its next growth phase will be driven by three major launches in 2026. Those include Tuan Straits in Desa Petaling, Selayang Mulia in Selayang, and the continued expansion of Permata Heights in Gombak. Now, Tuan Straits is slated to contribute at least 720 million ringgit in GDV from 1,310 units, while Selayang Mulia is projected to generate 567 million ringgit from 828 units. Meanwhile, the overall Permata Heights development is estimated at around 557 million ringgit in GDV, with its upcoming third phase adding another 72 million ringgit from 78 Superlink homes. Now, CPI Land Chairman Chung Shan Tat, he said the group's latest launch, Permata Gemma, the first phase of Permata Heights, with a GDV of 123 million ringgit, marked its entry into the luxury residential segment, describing it as a natural evolution rather than a shift in identity. He said that Permata Gemma was not about luxury for the sake of prestige, but about elevating the way people experience their homes, adding that the same design discipline seen in earlier projects is now expressed through finer materials and bespoke layouts. Chung stressed that the company's core focus remains the mid-tier segment, saying its foundation will never change, even as it responds to evolving buyer aspirations. He also said that CPI's land's growth since its founding in 2010 was driven by consistency, thoughtful design, and reliable delivery, noting strong take-up rates for past projects such as the Tuan series, Residency Dian 2, and the Permata Heights. Looking ahead, Chung said CPI Land plans to pursue selective land acquisitions in Johor and the Klang Valley, alongside joint ventures in high-growth corridors, while incorporating future-ready features such as solar-ready wiring and electric vehicle parking bays. He also added that the group aims to exceed 1 billion ringgit in new project launches annually over the next 5 years, supported by its expanding land bank and disciplined growth strategy. And finally, we're going to be wrapping it up with some major corporate developments and deals across Malaysia that are happening today, so keep an eye out. At number 1, the headline reads, Capital A Berhad said it has applied for an extension to complete the proposed distribution of Air Asia X Berhad shares to entitled shareholders by January 19th, 2026, from January 2nd due to an anticipated delay in AAX's private placement exercise. Our next headline at number 2, Axis Real Estate Investment Trust, or Axis REIT, said it is acquiring an industrial property in Senai, Johor for approximately 34.6 million ringgit. Our next headline, LFE Corporation Berhad said its wholly owned subsidiary, LFE Engineering Sdn Berhad, has accepted a letter of intent from Sunway Construction Berhad for a 11.5 million ringgit subcontract to complete a proposed data center and office development in Taman Technology Malaysia, Petaling, Kuala Lumpur. Our next headline reads, Camero Berhad has entered into agreements to acquire 2 adjoining freehold industrial properties in Kapar, Klang for approximately 6.3 million ringgit in cash as part of plans to address near-term capacity requirements ahead of the planned relocation of its processing operations. Our next headline, NCT Alliance Berhad said shareholders have approved all resolutions tabled at its EGM, paving the way for the proposed acquisition of NCT World Sdn Berhad. Finally, CJ Century Logistics Holdings Berhad said its Chief Executive Officer Stephen Teo Chu Hing has ceased to be a substantial shareholder following the disposal of 44.9 million shares, representing a 7.7% stake. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a wrap for the Midday Roundup with me, Wan Izul Islam, right here on KleverStock. Thank you so much for choosing us. Stay tuned for more upcoming live stream programs and hope you have a wonderful Friday ahead. We'll see you a bit later. Thank you so much.